Christian reads Quran. My top 3 misconceptions about Islam. This is by LT World, and I'm interested. I'm always interested to see the point of view of those who are not Muslim reading the Quran and thinking out loud what they think about it. Without further ado, let's watch.
I read the Quran, and this is what I discovered. Growing up, I never read the Quran. I grew up in a Christian household, and I am still a Christian to this day, so I read the Bible a lot. But I never read the Quran until a little less than a year ago. So this video is going to be about what I learned and what I discovered about the Quran, some common misconceptions I had or I see other Christians have about the Quran, and just kind of covering those topics. And if you guys like this video, if you guys find enjoyment in this video, I'll make more videos about the Quran and just some of the things in it, and as well as other religious books that I've read and will be reading.
So he have been reading for more than 1 year. That is interesting.
So if you like this type of stuff, definitely drop a subscribe, drop a comment, drop a like. So let's jump into it. First of all, I just want to talk about a general structure of the Quran that I discovered when I first started reading it. There are about 114 surahs within the Quran. Now, a surah is basically a chapter because the Quran is one big book. Unlike the Bible, which is multiple books written by multiple authors, the Quran is written by Muhammad, and it consists...
Of course, from the perspective of non-Muslim, they would say that, right? Because otherwise they say, who wrote it, right? So it's written by Muhammad. But of course, saying it is written by Muhammad itself is weird because Prophet Muhammad SAW do not write, right? So yeah, but I guess his how to say, what he want to mean is the author, right? The one who produced it, even if it's not in written form, later become in written form, that the author is Muhammad from his perspective. Yeah, but of course from Islamic perspective, Muhammad SAW is just relaying what is revealed to him, right? He do not write.
This of 114 surahs, or otherwise known as chapters, and each surah...
And to call it chapter as well, it will be quite interesting because in books you have chapter, and as he mentioned, the Bible is multiple books by multiple authors. Quran is from one singular source, from one author, and it's originally in verbal form. Hence, I think the surah makes sense. But when we transform it into a book and you call it a chapter, it would be weird because the shortest chapter have 3 verses. The longest chapter is like 280 verses. There's no book like that, right? Meaning, how can you call a chapter? Meaning there's one page with 3 chapters, and there's like 100 of pages of one chapter. What kind of book is that? So yeah, that's why calling it a chapter feels weird. But of course, because there's no other word to refer to surah, that's why people call it chapter.
Surah is broken down into verses, so there's verses within surahs. So that is how the Quran is structured. The last few of the surahs are really short and really easy to memorize, so therefore a lot of Muslims actually memorize the last few surahs and use them in a lot of prayers or chants and so forth. So that is how the Quran is generally structured. Now, it's interesting to note that each surah starts with the same phrase except for one, Surah 9, which incidentally people think it's that way because it's Surah 9, I believe, is a second part or a continuation of Surah 8, but they've been divided into 2 for some reason. But that's why people believe Surah 9 doesn't start with this phrase, which goes like this: in the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. That's how each surah starts within the Quran, except for Surah 9, which incidentally also, Surah 9 is the common surah used by jihadists and other radicals to defend their radical beliefs about killing non-Muslims and about killing the factors. So that is a common surah used by radicals, which is just an interesting note to put out there. But it's also important to note that most Muslims are very peaceful, or most Muslims don't.
It is interesting because from a Muslim, the first thing that I come to mind is Surah 9 is the surah that is always being used by those who want to paint Islam in a certain picture. Those who want to condemn Islam as a violence, etc., they always goes to Surah 9. But him, because him from outside, so he looks like, oh, there's an extremist from Muslim that use this surah for extremism. So it's interesting how we are seeing things from the totally different lens, right?
Necessarily believe that, especially within the West. But that is actually a surah that's commonly used by Muslims of the more radical jihadist side of things to defend their beliefs. So these are just some of the general structures of the Quran, some things that I observed. and some things to note before we jump into just a few of the misconceptions and a few things I learned along the way. And I'm going to be covering 3 in this video. And if you guys like this video, and you guys leave a comment and stuff like that, and show interest, I'm going to make more videos like this. And I'm actually just started reading the Talmud, my bad, the Jewish commentary book that the Jews use. So I've been started reading that, and I might actually make a series of videos on that as well. So again, if you guys like these videos, I will keep making them. So anyway, let's jump into what I had some misconceptions, some misconceptions I heard Christians have after reading the Quran, and just some of these things, some of the top 3 that I noticed. So number 1. I often heard that Islam was a religion without mercy. I often heard that Islam is merciless, that Muslims serve a God without any mercy, that's just purely submission based, all these different things, which isn't true. And that there's a reason why sometimes there can be a disconnect between Muslims and Christians when it comes to the whole mercy thing, because a lot of times Christians believe that Muslims worship a God without mercy, and Muslims can sometimes stare back confused, like, what are you talking about? I mean, I just read you the line that starts off every surah. Let me read it again. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. So the idea that Allah isn't merciful is actually completely bizarre to Muslims, because Allah is referred to as merciful throughout the Quran. Not just the beginning of each surah, but throughout the Quran, Allah is referred to as merciful a lot. And I mean a lot. And that kind of surprised me, honestly, because I did have this misconception that Allah was a God without mercy. Now, it is important to note that after I read the Quran versus reading the Bible, and I have read a couple other religious books as well, but just for comparison's sake for this, it is important to note that the understanding and conception of mercy within Islam is different than it is within other religions, especially Christianity. So, for instance, what I can best tell after reading the Quran, the mercy of Allah, it goes more like this, where Allah is willing or shows you mercy by overlooking your sins and evil in favor of the good you did, or in a way, if you think about of a scale, that your good outweighs your bad, and Allah will show you mercy by not observing this evil and rather focusing on the good that you did, allowing you into paradise at the end of your life, or when things come to an end. Versus, let's just say, Christianity, where it goes like this, where God shows you mercy by taking on the punishment of your sins and evil, and punishing himself, basically, and taking on the debt of your sin, in order that you may enter into heaven or enter into paradise and have a relationship and communion with God. So that is the difference. Allah doesn't take on the punishment of sin.
That's interesting when he put out that way, right? Because the way we look at mercy, if Christian see mercy as such, there's no other religion that have mercy, obviously, right? Because that the only religion that have the concept of God taking his own punishment on himself is in Christianity. There's no other religion that have such a thing. Hence, you will look at the world, and not only Islam, any other religion, you'll say that there's no such thing as mercy there and there and there and there, right? Because the definition or the mindset of mercy is, by definition, the core of Christianity, which is God taking the punishment on himself, right?
Because in Islam, he is so separated from creation, he's too holy for that. But within Christianity, mercy is understood as God taking on the punishment of sin, because our sin was that great that he needed to do that in order for us to be saved. So they both understand God to be merciful, but the technicalities of that mercy are different. And then also, mercy within other religions has similar nuances and is a little bit different. But again, just focusing on the Quran for this video. So that was misconception number 1. Now, misconception number 2. The Quran is the only relevant holy book in Islam, or relevant book of authority in Islam. This is not the case. There are many hadiths which are used in Islam, which are books basically of the history of the Quran, books that are written by Muhammad's close friends or disciples or relatives or so forth, who would have written about how the Quran was made, or written about the history of Muhammad, written about his life, and also would give either commentary on the Quran or under different understandings of the Quran, so forth and so on. So hadiths are used as a means to also bring light and theology for lack of a better term, to Islam. And this.
So I'm assuming because he only read the Quran and he just know about the hadith on a very surface level, hence his description of hadith is as such. So I wouldn't want to tear down him that much, because he didn't come with a proclamation that he really understand what this hadith is. But he is correct that as a source of jurisprudence, etc., because we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the messenger is an example of how to operationalize and implement in the real life as a human being, the hadith, which is the sayings of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that is relayed, as well as the Sahaba, the companions, observing Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam doing stuff, etc., and that is being relayed, that is basically a hadith, right? So yeah.
This is also how you get sometimes these different fractions within Islam, like Surah and Sunni and so forth.
Shia, right? He want to say Shia, right? Shia and Sunni, because he said surah or something.
Because they actually, some of these different
Yeah.
bring light and theology, for lack of a better term, to Islam. And this is also how you get sometimes these different fractions within Islam, like Surah and
Yeah, he want to say Shia, I think.
Sunni and so forth, because they actually, some of these different factions use different hadiths to interpret the Quran. And so sometimes they get these different theologies or different belief structures, and then actually there's schisms within the Islam community because of these different hadiths sometimes. So hadiths are also used to help explain what the Quran means, and the Quran is not the only holy book or a book of authority within Islam. So that was the second misconception that was uprooted after going through my little study. Lastly, the third,
I think to relate to compare to Christianity, it's more of like people only thought the Bible is only the gospel, when the Bible is actually have other books than the gospel, for example, right? So that's parallel to it when we talk about Quran and Hadith to that, right? Because as he mentioned, the Bible is collection of many books. Some are kind of like the Quran, which is claiming to be revelation from God. Many is like Hadith. I think gospel is like Hadith, where it is those people that observe Prophet Muhammad SAW or Jesus alaihissalam and relate. So gospel is like hadith, and the other books is something else, right? Like maybe like sirah, maybe like, I don't know, stories, etc. Yeah.
one I'll be covering in this video, is that a lot of people think that Islam completely rejects the Bible. That is not the case, actually. There are also many verses and within surahs that actually say that the Old Testament was delivered by Allah to Moses, that the people of the book were given revelation from Allah, and the Israelites were given revelation from Allah in the Old Testament in the form of the Bible, and that actually,
of course, in the nuance when he said the Bible or in the form of the Bible, etc. Because we are talking in English, and we use certain words in English to refer to what the Quran says, and sometimes things translated or something lost its meaning in translation, hence what is being understood here might not be that accurate from the original source, right? So yes, the Quran says about the revelation from Allah to the prophets, to Musa alayhi salam or Moses, to Jesus or Isa alayhi salam or Jesus, yeah. But I think Torah is the one that is even the claim, I think, is different, right? Because I think if I remember correctly, many Christians says that Torah is the writings of Moses. I'm not sure whether he write verbatim the revelation he got or not from the belief of the Christians, but if he write verbatim from what was revealed to him, it is the same Torah as mentioned in the Quran. But for gospel, because the gospel themselves never claim to be revelation from God to Isa, right? Or never claim to be like revelation from God the Father to Jesus. It's the writing of 4 different authors that relay from their perspective, relaying what happened to Jesus, etc., right? So it's more like hadith. So yeah.
Other cases, in some verses within the Quran, it also talks about the idea that if Christians or people of the book would actually follow the teachings of the book, that they would discover Allah or find Allah. Now, because of these verses and because of these teachings, a lot of Muslims now teach that the current Bible that people have is corrupted.
Is that the Quran is perfectly reliable. It's never been changed. In contrast, the New Testament has been corrupted. It's been changed. The Bible no longer says what it used to say.
That since the Bible, as it stands currently, rejects the Quran and doesn't leave room for the monotheistic God of Allah and so forth and so on, that there actually is a corrupted version of the Bible and can't be the Bible of or the book that Muhammad is referring to because of these reasons, plus a couple other reasons that factor into it. So
if you ask me, because if you ask many Muslim, they would give different various pattern of answers, different of how they are exposed to what is the Bible, etc. Right? From what I know, from my interaction with Christian, from what I understand of the Bible, I normally would not say the Bible as a writing is a corrupted version of an earlier writing, because my first challenge is which part of the Bible claims to be that revelation. I don't think any of the parts, except for maybe the Torah, is claiming to be that revelation, right? So, but the Christians remains that it's not that important, the verbatim writing itself. It's the message, right? It's the message. It's not in itself the word of God, but it is a message from God, basically, right? So from that perspective, I would say that the message is corrupted, because the original message from Musa or Moses, the original message from Isa or Jesus, is the same message of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is worship one God, right? That message is the one that is corrupted. But the book itself, I wouldn't say it is corrupted, because if you want to say corrupted, it have to have its original form to begin with, right?
So it's just interesting to note that Muhammad actually commends the Bible for being revelation from Allah, but due to...
That's a wrong statement. It mentioned that what was revealed to Musa and Isa is revelation from God. It doesn't say about the current Bible that is written from by some known or unknown authors of human being.
To the years or corruption or whatever it was, the Bible is now corrupt and no longer very suitable for teaching, according to common current day Muslim teaching. But Muhammad himself did refer to the people of the book having revelation through the Bible, and people of the book is just a way of referring to Christians, or they often refer to Jews as Jews, but people of the book is often referring to Christians. So that's also just an interesting note and something that I found fascinating as I read through the Quran. And now, as I said, I have learned a lot more than just this, and there's a lot of other things I discovered while reading the Quran, and a lot of other things I could talk about. But for this video, I just want to keep it quick and short, and just give you some of the top 3 misconceptions I had, and just an overview of what the Quran structured like, and what you can find in the Quran. And I would like to make more videos like this, but if you guys let me know what you guys think about these type of videos, and hearing more about it, and also hearing more about other religions like the Talmud with the Jewish book, Tao Te Ching with Taoism, and so forth and so on, some other religious books I've read or am reading currently. So just let me know. And
alright, so thank you very much to LT World for this video. It is interesting to see the perspective of anyone who read the Quran. If you have read the Quran, if you are not a Muslim and you have read the Quran for the first time, or having been reading it for a certain while, and you wish to share your views with me, feel free to do so. If you have made a video, share the link. If you want to even directly communicate with I don't know, online podcast, anything, feel free to say so. I'm very interested to know what your opinion, your perspective, etc. With that, thank you for watching. See you next time.